The season from hell, the franchise from hell continues. What is going on? Welcome back to the Dirty Bird Fly Through. And a bad time for the Atlanta Falcons already has just gotten 10 times worse as the injury that Michael Penix suffered yesterday against the Carolina Panthers is now reported to be a season ending knee injury that could be a complete ACL tear is being reported by Ian Rappaport and a bunch of other people that is a partial ACL tear in his left knee, but further testing has to be done and it could potentially require the full reconstruction of the ACL, which would take about 10 to 12 months to fully recover from. And if you needed anything to bring you down even more about the state of the Falcons right now, this will easily take the cake because this was a very crucial time for Michael Penix. Regardless of if you were winning or losing, Michael Penix, he was supposed to be your future franchise quarterback, and this was supposed to be the time that he was supposed to be developing. He was supposed to be sharpening his craft, continuing to build chemistry, working through some of the kinks and some of that raw prospect that we have seen, the raw aspects to his game. And now all of that has gone down the drain for the rest of this season and potentially next season. And Kirk Cousins will now be starting, presumably the rest of the year. The guy who the Falcons paid $40 million to, and every single throw he makes, he's ready to get whatever wide receiver he's throwing it to injured and in their career. He did several to Drake London yesterday, and on top of that, Drake London, he is now dealing with a PCL sprain. He's going to be out probably for a couple weeks. This, I don't think, has ever been a worse or spot for this Falcons franchise. And we've seen a lot with the Falcons. We have seen the Falcons blow lead after lead after lead. We have obviously seen the biggest collapse maybe in sports history from this team. We have seen opportunity after opportunity to finally take a step forward and make the playoffs be absolutely squandered by this team. We saw them get off to a 6-3 start last year and they absolutely blew it. We saw them get a big win versus the Bills on Monday night this year, and since then they have not won a game. And that leads me to say that everything that has happened this year with the Falcons in a year that was make it or break it for a lot of people in this franchise, but particularly for your coaching staff and for your front office. Raheem Morris was undoubtedly on the hot seat heading into this year, and Terry Fontenot essentially had to be there with him as a result of him already being able to survive one head coach firing. There's a very real chance that he wouldn't be able to survive another, and I don't see him doing it now. So, with that being said, I don't think there needs to be any more wait. The Falcons need to go ahead and they need to fire Raheem Morris. I was maybe expecting it today. Obviously, it did not happen. That means that Raheem Morris will coach with the team through this week in New Orleans, which that is a game that, as obviously special as it always is whenever you're playing the Saints, with how the Falcons are playing right now, it's hard to see the Falcons legitimately winning any game the rest of the season. The Falcons might end this season 3-14, and that might sound crazy to some people, but when you really look at where the Falcons are at right now, that really isn't actually as crazy, especially with the injury to Michael Penix, the injury to Drake London, which there's still some uncertainty about how long he's going to be out. You have Kirk Cousins, who really hasn't played consistently in about a year, and when we saw him play at the end of last year, was really a shell of his former self. He could not get the ball past the line of scrimmage. He made mistakes. He threw games away. He was a big part of the reason that the Falcons blew that 6-3 lead they had last year on the division. They had And he was a reason that Michael Penix was starting at the end of last year because of the poor performance of Kirk Cousins, because of the fact that he did not tell the organization that he was dealing with an injury. And now that same guy who damaged a lot of trust at the end of last year with this locker room and with this organization is once again going to be starting at quarterback for the rest of the season. And that is why at this point this season is essentially a complete write-off, regardless of what happens the rest of the way. The Falcons do not have a first round pick next April. The Falcons do not have a lot of money as of right now that they can play with. And with the injury to Michael Penix and the uncertainty of his future in Atlanta, that makes the prospect of what the Falcons' job potentially could have been not attractive at all. So when you do fire Raheem Morris at the end of the year, when you do fire Terry Fontenot, it's going to be very, very hard to get a top candidate in here. You're probably going to end up having to settle for the D candidate. You're going to have to probably, it would not shock me one bit if Jeff Ulbrich just is the coach of this team next year, because the Falcons cannot find anybody else to coach them. It legitimately would not shock me, because that is where this organization is currently at. We are in such a low point, the lowest point that we've probably been at for a very, very long time. And there's a lot of parallels, I think, being drawn to 2007. The thing with 2007 is everyone knew the moment that Michael Vick was busted that that season was down the gutter. This was a season where the Falcons were, at the very least, supposed to be contending for a playoff spot. A lot of people had the Falcons in the playoffs, but this was supposed to be a season you were at least contending. No, it was not going to be pretty. Yes, you had some young guys on this team. We knew that we did not have the greatest coaching staff. You were supposed to be contending. Instead, you're one of the worst teams in the NFL. Your season is over at week 11. You have no first round pick. And I'm going to be completely honest, it's not going to get any better for this organization. When you look at the potential of Michael Penix being out next year, you factor in his prior injury history, and especially if this requires a full-on reconstruction of the ACL that could potentially have him out until 2027, you cannot wait on Michael Penix that long. I've been a very big believer, a big advocate for Michael Penix this entire season and his development, but you cannot wait on a quarterback that is going to, by the point he is fully healthy, if he's ever even going to be fully healthy again. Michael Penix was not even fully healthy coming into this league. That is why you were praying that your offensive line could keep him upright and keep the wear and tear at a minimum. That's probably why you haven't seen Michael Penix use his legs that much. Even though he does have speed, he has not been using his legs for this exact reason. And also, what does this do to Michael Penix mentally, having to deal with yet another injury that is surely going to have him miss a significant amount of time? So I say all that to say the Falcons might once again be on the hunt for their franchise quarterback due to the injury history of Michael Penix. And Kirk Cousins is surely not going to be a answer. Number one, he's 37. Number two, he's absolute ass. So if you thought that these last 7 years was rough as a Falcons fan, buckle up, because probably at least these next couple, they're going to be just as rough, if not even rougher. And I officially think we are entering a true dark age of Atlanta Falcons football. This was a season that you had to get it right going in. You had to get this thing right. The way this roster had been built, the investments that had been put into it, really these past 2 seasons, you should have been making the playoffs, getting experience. You already fell behind schedule with your collapse last year. So this was really a make it or break it year for a lot of guys on this team. And the Falcons have absolutely failed with everything this year. And it leaves the franchise completely directionless for the first time, I would even say at the end of 2020, there was a little bit more optimism and direction because we knew at that point we had a lot of old guys. We knew that we had to turn it down and it was going to be a little rough, but you were at least going to get some younger guys in here. You got those younger guys in here, and a lot of those guys are still young, and you're not doing it. It doesn't matter how much talent you have, you're not getting it done. And it's going to lead to a situation where now the Falcons are going to once again have to blow it up. They're going to have to get a whole new batch of guys in, a whole new coaching staff in, a whole new front office in here, and it's just going to set this franchise back another 3 to 4 years. And, as someone who goes to games, as someone who invests a lot in the team, buys merchandise, talks about this team a lot, it's truly painful. I think it's past the point of just calling for one person's job or being upset with the play calling, because everything that was set in motion with the plan that the Falcons presented to us going into this season has absolutely blown up in our faces. We haven't been able to get the kicking situation right until pretty recently, and even that's not a guarantee from week to week. The defense has been okay overall. Yes, we have the most sacks we've ever had, but we just saw them give up 450 yards to Bryce Young yesterday. The defense really isn't that good as we thought it was. And we have just seen struggle after struggle with this offense all year long with inconsistency. And now it has hit a totally new low. And it leaves this entire team with no direction at all heading into 2026 and beyond that. So I mean, look, there's really nothing else you can say, because I don't know how you nail a hire when literally no one wants to come and coach you. So that's going to be the other really rough part. How many candidates are going to see the Falcons as intriguing when you do have other teams like the Titans who at least have Cam Ward? You have the Giants who have Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterboo, who's going to be coming back from an injury, but still, you might potentially see the Dolphins' job become open, the Raiders' job might become open, maybe the Bengals or the Browns, or maybe both those teams become open. Where do the Falcons really rank in desire among those teams? Sure, you got a bunch of other awful teams in there, but who really wants to come and coach the Falcons right now? It would essentially be a death sentence for their coaching career, as it was for Arthur Smith. And that, I really think, is what has led to the Falcons with Raheem Morris, because at the end of the day, there were not a lot of people who wanted to come to Atlanta. The Falcons interviewed a lot of people, and we really do not know if the Falcons turned them down, or these candidates like Mike McDonald or Mike Vrabel, they turned the Falcons down because of the structure of the Atlanta Falcons, because of how things are ran, how much power Rich McKay still holds. But at the end of the day, it's a very rough situation for a team that has already been suffering for so many years. And the suffering is unfortunately nowhere with a end in sight. So listen, for the rest of the year, I'm not even really going to go into the schedule, because as I said, it would not shock me if the Falcons lost every single game the rest of the season. Will they? Maybe they get one versus Saints. Maybe they beat the Jets. That's probably about it at this point, especially with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. With that being said, remember to like, to subscribe, to share out, and all the real Falcons fans out there, listen. It's going to be a very rough time. So if you're in for the ride, you're in for the ride. I appreciate everyone for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.